So this format, guys, in which I just pull up one of your comments where you ask questions or you post something that maybe not expect, but could use some clarification by me, and I just respond in a video format like I'm doing now. I enjoy it very much, and I know you enjoy it too. If I look at the statistics, so at the back end of my YouTube channel, the audience retention rate, so to say the watch time that you guys spend on these videos, is actually insanely high. It's of record heights, I would say. Most of these videos are pretty long in format, so it requires some attention from you, listening to my rambling like for 15 or 20 or 25 minutes. But seeing, again, the audience retention rate, it stimulates me to continue. And it's for a reason, I think, because I can give more context, I'm repetitive sometimes in my points, but that's necessary because it surprises me also sometimes how difficult it is to just make a simple point. You need to repeat it over and over again. And these questions you give, counter arguments sometimes, very doubtful, or people who just doubt the entire thing that we are doing, gives me the opportunity to just clarify from different perspectives the points. And I can also pull up some other videos, which I'm going to do also in this response video. This is a comment made by YZ, whoever that is, on the podcast, and there are some points that are made often, and just let me just go over it, and I will do my best to respond to that. So he writes, yes, Chopin was poor of hell. By the way, it's on the podcast, the first podcast. If you haven't seen that, go there. I think it's a very interesting conversation between Alberto and I. We're going to repeat that. In fact, we have recorded 3 or 4 more podcast, but they will be in the release of the Beethoven Fifth Symphony. I will update you soon also on that, or I have already. I don't know when this video is going to be online. So the points that are made here are obviously on points that we make during that conversation. So we talked about Chopin, the competition, and also his poor health and everything, and many things came on the table there. So he writes, yes, Chopin was of poor health most of his life, but he wrote these etudes in his 20s, 1925. He was in the best possible shape, and none of the symptoms of his illness had yet appeared at that time. As soon as he published them, they caused a great sensation, and for a long time were considered the pinnacle of piano technique. Even today, some pianists consider them harder than Liszt's etudes, because successful execution requires much more precision, endurance in playing long, unceased patterns, coherence, and musical versatility. Well, this first part, you have to always be careful, guys, when you build your argumentation to stick to one period. You cannot say it was a revelation in his days, and even today it is seen as a pinnacle of the piano technique. Those two points do not support each other. If you want to build your case around the fact that in Chopin's days his etudes were seen as the pinnacle of piano technique, you have to give me quotes from that day, and it will be hard. I mean, I'm not saying there are none, because Chopin's music was a revelation no matter what. He was the best-selling composer, I think, by far. There is one letter I remember from, I'm not digressing on this, but it's just interesting for you to know. Was it Schumann who was in Vienna, or was it Mendelssohn? I think it was Schumann writing to Clara, saying that in one music shop, I don't remember which one, that he visited, there was music by Mendelssohn, and I was also, I think, checking in of his compositions were there. But they said it's all Chopin there. I mean, Mendelssohn is not selling anything. Chopin is just the man. He's the composer. And so if Chopin's etudes were a revelation in terms of competing with the Liszt technique, Liszt etudes and Henselt and Thalbeck and what have you in that time, then you should not use quotes of today. So whenever you build your argument, you have to stick to one period only. You cannot combine the quotations or quotes from 2 different periods that are 150 years from each other. Saying, however, that the Chopin etudes are on the same level as Liszt etudes, that's just utter nonsense. That's not true. That's simply not true. Just looking at the scores. The Chopin etudes are even... I'm not speaking about the musicality, the musical aspect, the performance practice, because it's really great music. but you cannot compare it to Czerny in terms of musicality, but you cannot compare Czerny's difficulties with Chopin either. Czerny surpasses all of that. It's because of the excessive speed today that some of them really become difficult. But guess what? If you go to Czerny, most of them become plainly impossible. Not saying that's not here and there an etude can be played by the top level pianists today on a Steinway, come back to that. But comparing one to another, I mean, if I have to apologize for killing like the godlike status that we gave to people like Chopin, I'm not going to apologize for that because they weren't. They were incredibly gifted composers. They've left an oeuvre that we can just look at and say, how is it possible that one person could have done that? But this remark, and you have to be aware of that, I've said that before, it's deflective in nature. It opens a discussion, a research on what moment in Chopin's life was he on full power. That's interesting. I don't think that anyone has done that research. Or which moment was he not ill, completely not ill? It's irrelevant at the end, because if you watch metronome marks, if you regard metronome marks, you have to regard all of them. You cannot just put some pieces out of context and say, oh, we can do that. Like the Opus 10 number 3. Everybody's making now videos on the Opus 10 number 3, apparently. Yeah, we can play the beginning at 8 note 100. And so what does it mean? Even though those people who make the claims always all play at the end slower than the single beat 8th note 100. And when you go in this middle part, when you have to speed up, it's of course pretty difficult even for that etude. So, but you have to just go and see the entire context. You cannot say this fits my counter argument against the whole beat solution, and all the rest I forget. It's not possible. So this is not even on the level of an argument, I would say. And for the sources of the 19th century, right after the publication of the etudes, I don't know. I would be very interested to read what people said about that in terms of how unreachable it is. For instance, what I do know, Marshallus, he wrote, was it right after the death of Chopin or just during his life still that he, and they were familiar with each other. His daughter Marshall's daughter even studied with Pauline Viardot, if I remember correctly, but also with Chopin. So it's not that it was completely unknown music, or, I mean, they even played concerts together. But he writes in his diary, like, for me, the music is impossible to play. Not because he couldn't play the notes, but because of the harmonic structure. He said, my fingers refused to go in the modulation patterns or journeys that Chopin wants me to play. And that's the other kind of impossibility to play, which I can totally see knowing Marshallus. But I'm digressing. Continue. Then he says, narrower and shallower keys with lighter action allowed for faster speed without using as much force as is necessary for modern pianos. You admitted it yourself. Being physically weak or underweight doesn't mean you can't move your fingers quickly. Again, here, I said this about the fortepiano, the Viennese fortepiano. It's much lighter. If you're a weaker person, if you don't have much strength, obviously you're going to have much less trouble with the Viennese fortepiano. First point is Chopin played on that piano, but the majority of his life in Paris he played on a Pleyel. And you can say those pianos were amazingly much lighter than the Steinway of today. If you go to a regulated grand Steinway, I'm not so sure that's the case. It's lighter, yes, but not to a degree that it makes so much difference. And by the way, you lose your double escapement. What's that for a statement? I mean, that's the prime reason that the action developed, and not to become slower. The reason, the comment continues, but this is an important point. Then he just going to continue here, finish that, and then I'll come back to that. I have 2 recordings ready for you. I'm not so sure Chopin was seen as a virtuoso, is what I'm saying. And not so sure that's a serious statement. Well, the thing is here, Mr. I don't know your name, but anyways, the thing is here, what's a virtuoso? When I say virtuoso in one sense twice, it can mean in the 19th century understanding or in the modern understanding. Today, a virtuoso is seen as a performer who can play as many notes as possible in the shortest amount of time. That's just simply a virtuoso. And if I say Chopin was not seen as such a virtuoso, I mean in the 21st century description. He wasn't on par with Liszt or Thalberg. He wasn't just, just not. It's not that he wasn't admired. That's something really completely different. I didn't say that. For some, and you quoted yourself, he was seen as the best pianist. I think it was the poet who said, like, if I have to choose between Liszt or Thalberg as a pianist, I forgot the name, Hiller. You have to help me with this. Anyways, he said, like, I choose Liszt, I choose Chopin. And then he also said in the same quote, if you go and hear to play Chopin play, you have to put your ears like on the strings to even hear him play. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it shows a difference. It's a nice description of how much difference there was. And so he was not the kind of today's understanding of virtuoso that people would applaud for. Yeah, you can play so fast and so many. He didn't have that capacity. He didn't want to. Also, he was seen as one of the best pianists ever for his expression. And he was not an amateur. I didn't say that. I'm just, again, putting the etudes, as you just quoted, and many people do, in the context of today as we see it. I put the pianist Chopin in that light of the same virtuosic feeling or just imagination that description of a virtuoso as we have today. I just put Chopin's music and he as a pianist in that same context, and then no, it's not a match. That's just what I was saying. So what you say at the end, now even double beat, it's whole beat actually, but not regardless, is too fast. That's obviously not what I said. I said Chopin at certain moments of his life, the etudes in whole beat are not for everyone. I haven't said it's easy music. I just said it's not of the same technical level again as many Liszt etudes. I mean, the transcendental etudes of Liszt, if you just take that, it goes beyond Chopin's etudes like light years. It's not even the start to compare. It's not even comparable. That's just what I meant. But the point is, to play Chopin's etudes in whole beat, you have to be really on top of your game, Certainly if you're going to leave out the pedal, and certainly if you're going to play on an older piano. The narrow keys, have you any idea if you play on a periodical instrument, certainly a violinist, but also a player, how much more difficult it is to just grasp all the difficult chords? Narrow keys means you don't slip with your fingers between the black keys. On my Fritz Forte piano and on the Viennese pianofortes in general, they solved that. They didn't broaden, they didn't make the keys wider. They made the black keys slimmer. Have you any idea if you play octaves on a piano with very slim upper keys, how difficult that is? People who say that periodical instruments make the life of the pianist easier in terms of speed and this kind of virtuosity, they have no experience with those pianos. Period, I would say. Certainly not with Viennese pianofortes. There is a guy who responded here. Jim Clark, that's because the Valentina Lisitsas of the fortepiano isn't yet there. I would enjoy. I mean, if Lisitsa would care to come at my place, I wouldn't give her the Fritz. I want that piano to remain a state-of-the-art action, not giving that to a modern Russian piano virtuoso. But she could go on the Frenzel, and I will live stream that. She will cry. She will certainly feel as if she cannot play any longer. You have no imagine. If the double escapement is gone, and you feel a light key under your fingers that just by touching it goes down in a way that you lose the ability to play, because that's what happens. It's so sensitive. You have to do everything right. That just the idea that going on a piano like that solves all the problems. It's absolutely not true. It's nonsense. And then Jeremy writes here, Period instruments are so much easier to play that the fastest Hammerklavier is played on modern instruments. Of course, that's being rejected here by Mr. George. Don't you understand? Everything he says is biased opinion, always in the service of his theory. Well, if this is a biased opinion, where is your showcases for your theory? What's actually your opinion? Because an opinion is just an idea. That's easy. What we say the WBMP is a practice is literally that. We have dozens of recordings right now on a very high level, free for you to watch. That just shows, that brings into practice what we claim to be the case. And if that's not enough, let's go to the recording of Mr. Brautigam. If you think that's played on a fortepiano, if you think he is a loser, then go ahead and fill my comment boxes with that. But I think you will be surprised. I knew him in Amsterdam. He was a teacher there. He was one of the prodigies of the Amsterdam Conservatory when I was there, for a simple reason that he is just an unbelievable player. And he is one of those pianists who more or less also went to the fortepiano, made the transition. And well, here you have his Hammerklavier sonata. So I was tapping on my phone to check the tempo again. He starts in 108, guys. It's not 138 for a reason. Have you an idea that this piano can go much faster? I don't know if he makes a mistake there in the second bar or it's just a piano. This guy knows how to play the piano, eh? Don't think that you have a better technique than him. And then he slows down to 100, and then when you have the repetitive note with the bass, have you heard how he anticipated that? If you land also the first note, here you have it again. Listen to the first note, the care. I mean, the guy listens to his instrument. Why is a first note played in whole beat? Tom, tom, ta tom, ta ta tom. Does anyone know why? I know. Because he doesn't take the risk to play it with the two hands, which actually I think is Beethoven's intention. Why would Beethoven leave out the full chord there if it wasn't ta-tom, ta-tom, ti-ta-tom? I mean, I don't see any other reason. But even he plays with, maybe he plays with one hand, he has to anticipate. You would immediately destroy the tuning of the piano when you land in full force on that first chord. Not possible. Not possible. And then when you go further, you have the anticipation, jump, ta pa pa pam. So the left hand repetitions. That bar, or that half note actually, or that bar is played in around 80. You can say like it's just an agogic element, it's just an accentuation. No, it's a jump that he needs to anticipate, and the repeated notes go in a tempo like on a fortepiano. What have you? Luckily, it's not, I mean, these repeated notes are not even so problematic. I should check actually how he plays the scherzo, because there it's impossible. You have, I don't know from memory anymore how many notes per second you need for to repeat there, but we come back to that. But so he anticipates because he plays on the fortepiano, and then suddenly that one bar is played like in a stretched time, because he plays on the fortepiano. So far for the notion, for the fairy tale that on the fortepiano this all works. If it was possible on the fortepiano, why on earth would Brautigam not play 138? It's the most known metronome on this planet. If you can solve that as the first, do it. I mean, he wouldn't hesitate. He wouldn't hesitate. He didn't. It's one of the slowest versions that I know. What happened is a very interesting story. You have another recording of Brautigam is here. And by the way, remember some of the, was it Left Hound saying, yeah, I don't know who said, like, you have just a small audience, like no views. Compare that to Lisitsa. I mean, that shows everything. Well, 239 views, 620 subscribers. And probably the answer will be, yeah, but he doesn't do much to to push his channel. Probably not. But it's not a benchmark overall. But here you have 33,612 views. And it's the same recording. You will hear the same mistake at the beginning. And suddenly, it's Brautigam here. Brautigam says, Naxos on behalf of BIS. Let's listen to the tempo. Suddenly it is 138. Have you any idea how that comes? Appropriate tempo, it writes Mr. Trakotel. He was once on my channel. I mean, the moderators kicked him off for reasons. So, slower, original recording, 239. We read here in the description, Hammerklavier Sonata Opus 106, B flat major, first movement, sped up recording. Again, the comment, I think it would be slightly easier to play this on the fortepiano. It is played on the fortepiano. I mean, people, a modern Steinway would have much more resistance. No, a modern Steinway handles the resistance much better. You can land on the key. That's impossible on the fortepiano. But this sentence here, sped up recording, is a very famous one. If you go to the Wiener Urtext edition of Beethoven's Hammerklavier, you will see an introduction by Johann Sonnleitner. And this guy is mentioned because he was in contact with Sonnleitner. Like, is it really Brautigam playing like that? And then he had to admit, go there, read it. It's in the public. He had to admit, no, I sped it up. And then he made the changes in his channel. That's for honesty. That's so far for honesty. I mean, isn't it ridiculous? Just ridiculous. We want to enjoy the Hammerklavier Sonata on the fortepiano, and in order to do that, we have to digitally sped it up. And now we're happy because it's so beautiful. It's obviously what Beethoven meant. I mean, maybe I'm joking a little bit, but actually it's very sad. It's very sad. Why do people just pursue this idea of like, oh, when we just, there around the corner, there, if we just would be there, and when we turn to the right, then, oh my God, that would be so beautiful. In the meantime, we keep on struggling, we keep on pushing our students, I mean, until they have injuries. I don't mind. That's only for the happy few guys to come there. And then we would turn around the corner. That's what we are going to see there. Luckily, we have the digital technology. We can speed up Brautigam's recording. I don't know what to say. Why? What's there around the corner? And then you come there, probably in many instances, nobody comes there ever. That's what keeps this like interesting. Because if you come there and you turn around and say, turn around the corner, and there's nothing. That would be like a deception. So we better not come there because we have the promise that when we come there, there will be something. And I have no words for that. So I'm not saying that Mr. YZ there is suggesting this probably out of ignorance in a way that, you know, it's the thing that you hear all the time. Yeah, but the lighter touch, it makes it so much easier. The narrower keys make it so much easier. Yeah, then play the Hammerklavier Sonata on my clavichord. It's by far the lightest instrument of all. It doesn't have even an action. Doesn't require double escapement either. Probably the clavichord is the instrument on which you can repeat notes the fastest of all. Much faster than on the Steinway. The thing is, the instrument can do that. We cannot do that. And also the clavichord, by the way, it's not able to to absorb the impact of just a landing hand on a full chord after playing a bass note. I mean, it's not possible. It's not possible. So again, 25 minutes, guys. I'm sorry for these long segments, but I guess, as I said at the beginning, you don't mind me going really in depth, as I see in the statistics on YouTube. So I don't mind going in depth because we need to hammer it down. This idea of the pianoforte saves everything. It's just not true. Also, the idea of Chopin, like, don't touch my Chopin. That's actually what it is. Don't touch my Chopin. That's the image I created. I don't want to lose that image. It's so understandable. I get it. Really, I get it. But I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize for taking that down, that image. You can keep that. But it's hard to keep that image when you know that what he actually meant was not what is necessary for you to keep him on this statute, you know? It will not be possible once the idea of the WBMP is spread more. The inevitable thing is that these gods will become human beings again. We will make a segment on Franz Liszt and taking down very hard. I never heard the guy play, nobody did. He was probably one of the most musical pianists ever. And not an amateur in terms of technique, but their contemporaries saying very, very convincingly that when Liszt would come back, even in 1924, he would be surprised how the world evolved, that he would not be able to do what people in 1924 even were able to do. And it makes sense, right? It makes sense. There was no hidden force in the 19th century around Vienna and Paris and London that somehow radiated these people with an extraterrestrial force that enabled them to do things that they were not even aware of how exceptional they were. And then when the spaceship just disappeared into the space again, turning everybody into human beings again as we are now, suddenly we wake up in a world where we don't understand metronome marks anymore. It didn't happen. Didn't happen. It didn't simply happen. And yes, we're going to kill that image. We're going to kill also the incentive of many pianist teachers like, it's around the corner, just practice a little bit more. There is nothing around the corner. You know where the musical paradise of those composers lie? Behind us. You have to just turn around and then you'll see it. And I think that's a nice closure of this video that went way over the length that I anticipated. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it. If so, hit the like button, subscribe button if you haven't been subscribed. And then we will see each other very soon again. Bye.